You have applied to tens of IT jobs and still feel stuck with no interview. The truth is, most advice out there sounds smart but leads you in circles. In this video, you will learn what really works to stand out and get noticed. I will even share the exact lessons I learned after applying to over 100 real IT jobs. When I first sent out resumes, I thought filling the page with everything would impress people. But recruiters, they only looked the top part. The lesson I learned is simple. Put your best skills or biggest wins right at the top. Why? Because recruiters only scan resumes for about 6 seconds before they decide if you are worth a closer look. Once I started leading with my stronger skills like a coding project, I started getting more replies, even interview calls. And here is your quick win. Make those first 6 seconds count. Show what makes you valuable right away. At the start, I kept thinking longer resumes means more chances. But the truth, a one-page resume is all you need. If you are a junior, focus only on what matters. Why? Because recruiters or hiring managers do not have time to dig through long resumes. They want the highlights fast. Once I cut mine down for a clear one page, no fluff, no extra details, I noticed more people were actually reading it. So remember, every line on your resumes must earn its spot. Less noise means more punch. Also, when I first started applying, I sent the same resumes to every job. I thought more applications equals more chances, but it didn't work that way. The real lesson, customize your resume for each role. Show them exactly why you fit. Why? Because hiring managers can tell when you send a generic applications. It feels lazy. And lazy people do not get interviews. When I started tweaking my skills and examples for each job, matching what they needed, I started standing out, even when I applied to tough positions. And here is a shift. A target resume beats a generic one every single time. There was a time when I applied to dozens of roles and heard nothing back. No replies at all. I wondered if my resume was broken. Then I learned about applicant tracking system. Most companies use softwares to scan resumes and filter them before a human even looks. That means if you do not include the right keyword from the job description, your resumes might get blocked right away. When I started adding keywords from the actual job post, like specific programming languages or tools, I finally started getting past the filters. So do this. Match the job keywords or the system might reject you before you even get a chance. I used to think one little spelling mistake was no big deal until a recruiter told me they passed on my resume because of a typo. That hurts. But it taught me something important, very valuable. Typos kill trust, and trust is everything. Because attention to details is a big deal in tech. If you miss a typo, they wonder what else you might miss on the job. Now I always suggest my students proofread resumes at least once. Clean, mistake-free resume shows you care, and that makes a big difference. Early on, my resume had bullet points like worked on a website or helped with testing, but nobody seems to care. Then I realized employers want to see results, not just tasks. Why? Because results prove you made a difference. When I rewrote my bullet points to focus on outcomes like build features that reduce load time by 40%, I started getting interviews. And here's the magic, numbers and outcomes grab attention. Show how you made things better. I used to feel stuck because I had no formal job yet. And I thought, how can I show experience if nobody was hired me? But then I realized something powerful. Projects count as experience too. Why? Because projects or open source work show real world skills. They prove you can build and solve problems. When I listed my projects like real job entries, my resumes looked way stronger. So do not wait for companies to give you experience. Projects you build yourself can open multiple doors. Switching from another career into tech felt scary. I kept thinking my past jobs would hold me back. But one of my mentors told me, your background is not a weakness. It is an advantage if you show transferable skills. As skills like communication, teamwork, or leadership matters a lot in tech. When I framed my past work as a proof of those skills, instead of ignoring it, recruiters saw me as someone with a unique angle. So, if you are switching paths, your story can be strength. Use it to show what that makes you different. When I started preparing for interviews, I thought reading tips was enough. But every time I sat down in front of a real coding question, I froze. Then I learned the real secret. Practice like it is a real thing. Interviews are not just about knowledge, they are about handling pressure, staying calm, and thinking clearly. And once I started doing timed coding challenge and mock interviews, my nerves started fading. I walked into interview feeling sharper. And here is what I discovered. Practice builds confidence, and confidence changes everything. In my first few interviews, I got tripped up by the easiest question. Tell me more about this project on your resume. I froze, even thought it was my project. That was the wake up call. You need to know your own resume inside and out. Anything you list, a project, a skill, a tool, is a fair game. They will ask about it. Once I started reviewing every line of my resume before interview, I could speak up with confidence because I was ready for anything. And take this very seriously. If it's on your resume, be ready to tell the full story. Earlier, I thought answering tell me about a time questions was just about telling a story. But I keep rambling. I lost the point. Then I learned about STAR situation, task, action, result. It keeps your answer clear and focused. You give them the background, what you had to do, what you did, and what happened. When I started using STAR, my answers got lighter, crispier, and much clearer. And interviews paid more attention because I got straight to the result. And here is the shift. STAR makes you sound organized, professional, and clear. So use it. I used to go quiet in coding interviews because I thought I needed to figure it out in my head. But that silence hurts. The real secret, talk through your thought process out loud. Interviews are not just looking for the right answer, they want to see how you think. Even if you get stuck, explaining your approach shows problem solving skills. And once I started thinking out loud, interviews felt more like teamwork. And some interviews even gave me hints because they could follow my process. Remember this, silence hides your skills, talking shows them. In one interview, I got a coding question that felt super vague. But instead of asking, I guessed what they mean. Bad move. The lesson, if something is unclear, always ask for clarification. Why? Because in real jobs, asking good questions is a strength. It shows you care about accuracy and you do not rush into assumptions. And remember this, a good programmer never assumes anything. When I started asking thoughtful questions in interviews, I felt more confidence. And sometimes they simplified the problem once I asked. And here's the takeaway, asking questions is not a weakness, it shows you are smart and careful. My first interview process was brutal. I thought it was just one interview. It ended up being 5 rounds over 2 weeks. I was not ready, I was not prepared. What I learned, most of interviews have multiple rounds. Be ready for the marathon because they are not just testing skills, they are checking how consistent you are. If you can stay sharp through each round. Once I knew to expect this, I started pacing myself. I kept my energy up. I stayed positive after each step. So, here is your mindset. Interviews are not a sprint, they are a series. Plan for the long game. At first, when they asked, do you have any questions for us? I said, no. I think I'm good. Big mistake. I learned later you should always have questions ready because it shows you care about the role. It shows you are thinking like someone who belongs to the team. When I started asking things like, what does success look like in this role? What kind of project would I be working on? It left a stronger impression. And here's the shift. Good questions lead them thinking about you in a positive way. In one interview, I completely blanked on a question. My heart started racing. I wanted to panic, but instead I said, can I take a moment to think? And you know what? They nodded. I took a breath and I found my answer. The lesson, staying calm under pressure matters just as much as getting answers right. If I ever get stuck, I pause, breathe, and reset. And it makes me a lot more confidence. And here's your takeaway, a deep breath beats a rush to answers. Stay steady, and you will perform better. When I started applying, I filled my resume with certificates. But every interview kept asking, can you show me what you built? This is when I realized a real project impresses way more than a certificate. Why? Because anyone can take a course, but not everyone turns knowledge into something useful. Once I built a small application, nothing fancy, just a working tool, interviews got excited. They wanted to see, they wanted to talk about it. And here is a shift. A real project you can demo speaks louder than words on paper. Build something real. I used to hide my code on my laptop. I thought employers would only care about the resume, but I was wrong. The truth, hiring managers check GitHub to see how you code, as your code shows how you think and how you solve the problems and how clean your work is. When I uploaded my projects to GitHub with good names, clear folders, and simple documentation, it turned into a portfolio which I can use with every single application. And here is your move: put your best code online. Let your GitHub tell the story. I felt stuck in the need of experience to get a job, and I need a job to get experience. It feels like a trap and impossible. Then I realized you can create your own experience. Why? Because hands on work, even unpaid, still counts. You can freelance, help a local business, volunteer, or even build tool for friends. While I added small freelancer gig and volunteer coding to my resume, it gave me extra push. It showed real world experience. And here's a breakthrough: you do not need to wait for someone to give you a chance. Create it. At first, I tried learning everything: React, Angular, Vue, Node, and everything else. I wanted it all on my resume, but I kept feeling overwhelmed. Then my mentor told me this: it is better to go deeper than wider. Employers value someone who solid in one stack over someone who weak in many. You do not need 10 frameworks, you need one that you know well. When I focused mastering just JavaScript first, I felt more confidence and I could answer deeper questions in interview. And here is the win: go deep in one core skill, master it before adding more. During my job hunt, I hit a point where I felt stuck. No callbacks, just waiting. But then I decided I will keep learning while I wait. Learning a new tool, new framework, or a skill gave me fresh things to add to my resume, and it gave me something new to talk about in interviews. Every time I learned something new, I felt more confidence walking into interviews, and it showed them I was growing even before landing a role. And here is the mindset: keep moving forward. Every new skill builds your story. When I started applying, I thought I would get a job in few weeks. But the no email kept coming, and some companies never replied at all. This is when I learned rejection is normal. Sometimes it takes many applications to land one job. Once I stopped seeing every rejection as a failure, I stopped feeling stuck. I realized every no got me closer to the right yes. Here is what kept me going: you only need one company to say yes. So keep going. After one tough rejection, I started thinking maybe I am just not good enough. But then I learned something: they are not rejecting you as a person, they are rejecting a piece of paper. Hiring decisions happens for many reasons. Maybe the role changed, maybe they hire an intern, maybe someone had more experience. Once I understood that, I stopped blaming myself. I started moving forward faster. And here's a mindset shift: rejection is not a verdict on your future, it is just a step in the process. At first, I only cared about one thing: the job offer. But waiting for that made me feel like I was failing every day. Then I learned you have to celebrate the small wins along the way. Every step forward counts. Getting a coding test, victory. Landing an interview, victory. Making it to the final round, huge victory. When I started enjoying those moments, I stayed motivated. I stopped feeling stuck. Every small win means progress, and progress adds up. There were days I looked at job listing and thought, I will never be good enough for this. That voice in my head kept telling me I was faking it. But here is what I learned: every developer feels this at some point in their life, even the pro. Why? Because imposter syndrome shows up when you are growing. It tries to hold you back right when you are leveling up. Once I realized this feeling was normal and temporary, I kept applying. I kept showing up. And here's the truth: you belong here, you are learning, and you are more ready than you think. When one of my friends started posting, I got hired on the LinkedIn, I felt like I was falling behind. It made me doubt myself. My mentor told me their timeline is not your timeline. Focus on your race. Remember, everyone's path is different. Some people get hired fast, other takes longer. That does not mean you are failing. Once I stopped comparing, I felt more free. I stopped rushing, I started focusing on my growth. And your friend's success does not mean your failure. Your time will come. I used to think my first developer job had to be perfect: big company, exciting tech, great pay, but it did not happen that way. And you know what? That was okay. Your first job is about building experience, not chasing perfection. The first job is about launchpad. It gets you hands-on practice. It builds your confidence. The fancy roles will come later. Once I stop chasing the perfect job and focus on getting any dev job, doors opens already. And here's the key. Your first job is your starting point, not the finish point. There was a time I burned out hard. I applied non-stop, stayed up late practicing coding, and ignored everything else. It backfired. That is when I realized you need to take care of your health while job hunting. This process is a marathon, not a sprint. If you burn out, you lose focus and you lose hope. Once I started taking breaks, going outside, doing exercise, and making time for friends, I felt stronger and more clear headed. And here is your reminder, rest is not wasting time, it is recharging so you can keep going. When I first started applying, I thought every resume went into the same pile. But then someone told me, if an employee refer to you, they skip you to the top. Referrals are a secret shortcut. Companies trust their own people. If someone inside says you are good, you start with credibility before they even read your resume. Once I started asking friends and connections for referrals, even people I barely knew, doors started opening. And here's the power move. Do not just apply cold. Find someone inside. A referral can move you from invisible to invited. I used to read job description and think, I only know 60% of this stuff. No way they would hire me. So I would skip applying. But here is what I learned. Job descriptions are wish list, not checklist. Why? Because most companies write the dream candidate, but they often hire people who are eager and willing to learn. Once I started applying, even when I was missing a few skills, I actually got interviews. Nobody ever said, you did not check every box. So remember this, let them decide if you are a fit. Do not take yourself out of the game before it starts. When recruiters first looked me up, my LinkedIn was empty. No photos, no headlines, barely filled out. I wondered why nobody was messaging me. Then I realized LinkedIn is your online handshake. Why? Because 95% of recruiters check LinkedIn. If it's empty, they move on. And once I added relevant details, I started getting messages. And here's your quick win. Make your LinkedIn clear, friendly, and complete. It is like a board for your career. At first, I thought applying online was enough. I sent hundreds of applications and waited, but nothing happened. Then someone told me talking to people beats cold applying. People hire people they know or they trust. A real conversation with someone inside a company can do more than 100 online forms. And here is the shift. Networking is not begging for jobs. It is building real connections, and those connections open doors. A thank you note is not just polite, it is a secret way to leave a great final impression. Most people skip it. And when you do it, it shows you are thoughtful, professional, and serious about the role. Now, I always send a short thank you email within 24 hours, every single time. And here's the win. A simple thank you can quietly boost your chances. Do not miss it. There was one company I really wanted to work for, but after my interview, I heard nothing for weeks. Finally, I sent a short, polite follow up email, and the recruiter replied the same day that they had been busy but still interested. That taught me something important. Following up shows you care, as long as you keep it polite and professional. Hiring takes time. Sometimes they forget to update you. A gentle nudge reminds them that you are waiting and still excited. And here's the key. If you have not heard back in 2 weeks, send a polite follow up. One email and then wait. I still remember the sting of my first rejection email. I wanted to ignore it or was write something angry. But instead, I took a deep breath and sent a thank you for their time. 2 months later, and the same recruiter emailed me again and they said, we have a new role, and they thought I would be the perfect fit for them. That is when I realized being gracious when you lose keeps door open for later. Why? Because how you handle rejection show your character. People remember the candidate who stayed professional, not the one who vanished or complained. And here's your power move. Thanks them, even if they say no. It is not the end, it could be a future yes. At first, I thought interviews were just one and done. But then I learned every interview is a chance to grow your network. After one interview, I added the recruiters on LinkedIn with a short thank you note. A year later, they messaged me back about a new opening. Recruiters fill many roles over the time. If you left a good impression, they might think of you again. And now, after every interview, I connect with recruiters or interviewers. It costs nothing, but it grows my network. And here is the mindset: even if the job doesn't work out, the connections might help you next time. When I got my third job offer, I felt like I had to say yes right away. But a friend told me to pause and check the salary range online first. Turns out the offer was lower than the average for that role. So I politely asked if they could adjust it. And they did. That is when I learned you have more power than you think. Employers expect you to negotiate. Why? Because asking for a fair pay is quite normal. As long as you stay polite and reasonable, they will not pull the offer. And here's a reminder: research the range, and if the number feels low, ask. You deserve to pay it fair. Thank you for staying with me today. If you want to keep moving forward, you should watch my next video about what I learned about reviewing 50 developers' resume. And it will help you to avoid common mistakes and make your resume stand out. You are closer to getting hired than you think. So let us keep moving together.